The summer of 1890 brought more than just cattle drives to the Double Eagle Ranch. It brought secrets, shame, and an unexpected partnership that would challenge everything the Nebraska Territory believed about education, worth, and the quiet courage it takes to learn what you should have been taught years ago. Wade "Dusty" McKenzie had been foreman of the Double Eagle for 8 years, turning a struggling cattle operation into one of the most successful ranches in 3 counties. At 31, he was respected throughout the territory not just for his skill with horses and cattle, but for his ability to manage men, plan complex operations, and negotiate contracts that kept the ranch profitable even during the hardest seasons. What most people didn't know was that Wade's success came despite a childhood of poverty and neglect that had left gaps in his education, gaps he had spent years quietly filling through determination and late-night study. The ranch owner, Colonel Morrison, trusted Wade completely, leaving most daily operations in his capable hands while pursuing political ambitions in the territorial capital. Wade ran the Double Eagle with a combination of firm leadership and genuine care for his employees, earning the kind of loyalty that money couldn't buy and respect that came from proven competence rather than inherited position. That reputation for fairness and discretion made Wade the natural choice when Colonel Morrison needed someone to handle a delicate family situation that had been causing scandal throughout the territory. Wade first learned about Lily Morrison during a tense conversation with the colonel in late June, when the older man returned from an extended trip east, looking haggard and worried. "Wade, I need to ask something difficult of you," Colonel Morrison began, pacing the office with uncharacteristic nervousness. "It's about my niece. My brother's daughter. She's been living with relatives in Kansas, but the situation has become untenable." Wade waited patiently, recognizing the signs of a man wrestling with family obligations and social expectations. "Lily is 23 years old," the colonel continued. "She should be married by now, settled with a family of her own. Instead, she's been passed from household to household because she has certain deficiencies that make her unsuitable for proper society." The word deficiencies carried implications that made Wade uncomfortable. He had seen too many people dismissed as deficient when they simply hadn't been given proper opportunities. "What kind of deficiencies?" Wade asked carefully. Colonel Morrison's face flushed with embarrassment. "She cannot read or write, Wade. Not a single word. She's never been to school, never had proper tutoring. My brother believed education was wasted on women, especially daughters who would only marry and bear children. Now she's an adult woman, with the intellectual capacity of a child, unable to function in civilized society." But the most shocking revelation was yet to come. "I need you to take her in," the colonel said bluntly. "Give her some simple work around the ranch, keep her occupied and out of trouble. She's arriving on tomorrow's train, and I'm trusting you to handle the situation with your usual discretion." Wade stared at his employer, trying to process the implications of what was being asked. "Colonel, you want me to take responsibility for a grown woman because her family finds her embarrassing?" "I want you to give her a place where she can be useful without being a burden," Morrison corrected. "Lily is simple, Wade. Sweet-natured but limited. She needs structure and purpose, someone patient enough to guide her without expecting too much. I can't think of anyone better suited for the task." The arrangement troubled Wade more than he cared to admit, but his loyalty to Colonel Morrison and his own protective instincts toward people society had written off made him agree to meet the train the next day. What he found waiting on the platform challenged every assumption he'd been given about Lily Morrison. She was small and slender, with dark hair neatly braided and intelligent brown eyes that took in everything around her with keen observation. Her dress was simple but well made, and she carried herself with quiet dignity, despite obvious nervousness about her new situation. Most importantly, when she looked at Wade, he saw not intellectual deficiency but carefully concealed shame, the expression of someone who had been told so often that she was stupid that she had begun to believe it herself. "Miss Morrison?" Wade approached with his hat in his hands, his manner respectful rather than condescending. "I'm Wade Mackenzie, foreman of your uncle's ranch. I'm here to escort you home." Lily's response surprised him completely. Instead of the simple childlike greeting he'd been expecting, she spoke with careful precision. "Thank you, Mr. Mackenzie. I appreciate your kindness in meeting me. I hope my presence won't be too much of an inconvenience." The words were formal, almost rehearsed, but they revealed a quick mind and careful attention to proper behavior. This wasn't a woman with intellectual limitations. This was someone who had learned to hide her intelligence behind a mask of simplicity. And that's when everything began to change. During the wagon ride to the ranch, Wade began to understand the real story behind Lily's reputation. She had been raised by a father who believed women needed no education beyond basic domestic skills, kept isolated from schools and books while her brothers received full educations. When her father died and she was sent to live with relatives, her inability to read or write had been seen as proof of mental deficiency rather than educational neglect. "I know what my uncle told you about me," Lily said quietly as they traveled the dusty road toward the Double Eagle. "I know everyone thinks I'm simple-minded. Sometimes it's easier to let them believe that than to try to explain why a grown woman never learned to read." Wade glanced at her, seeing the pain behind her composed expression. "Why didn't you learn? Were you never given the opportunity?" Lily's laugh was bitter. "My father said education would make me unfit for marriage, that men didn't want wives who thought they were smarter than their husbands. He said my job was to learn cooking, sewing, and childbearing, nothing more." "And your relatives? They never tried to teach you?" "They were too embarrassed by my ignorance to admit I could be taught," Lily replied. "It was easier to call me simple than to acknowledge that a 23-year-old woman had been denied basic education. Simpler to pass me along to the next household than to take responsibility for helping me catch up." Wade felt anger building in his chest, not at Lily, but at the series of adults who had failed her so completely. Here was a woman with obvious intelligence and dignity, branded as deficient because she had been systematically denied opportunities that should have been her birthright. But you haven't seen the biggest surprise yet. That first evening at the ranch, as Wade showed Lily to the small cabin that would be her quarters and explained her duties helping with meals and basic ranch maintenance, she made a request that revealed the depth of her determination to change her circumstances. "Mr. Mackenzie," she said, her voice steady despite obvious nervousness, "I know my uncle expects you to keep me busy with simple work that doesn't require much thinking. But I was hoping, that is, I was wondering if you might be willing to teach me to read." The request hung in the air between them, carrying weight that went far beyond simple literacy. Lily was asking for the chance to transform herself from the simple woman everyone believed her to be into someone who could participate fully in the world around her. "You think you can learn?" Wade asked, not with skepticism but with genuine interest. Lily's eyes blazed with determination. "I know I can. I've been watching people read all my life, trying to figure out how the marks on paper turn into words and ideas. I've memorized the shapes of letters from signs and newspapers, even though I don't know what they mean. All I need is someone patient enough to show me how they fit together." Wade studied her face, seeing intelligence that had been suppressed but never extinguished. "It won't be easy. Learning to read as an adult takes considerable effort and dedication." "I have nothing but time and determination," Lily replied, "and I suspect you understand what it's like to have to work harder than others for what you know." The observation was perceptive enough to surprise Wade. She had somehow recognized in him a fellow self-made person, someone who had acquired education through determination rather than privilege. "What makes you think that?" he asked. Lily smiled for the first time since her arrival. "Because you talk like an educated man, but you have the hands of someone who learned everything through hard work. And you don't treat me like I'm stupid, which means you've probably been underestimated yourself at some point." The insight convinced Wade that teaching Lily to read wasn't just possible. It was necessary. Here was a mind that had been forced to remain hidden, but had never stopped working, analyzing, learning whatever it could from observation and experience. Wait, don't miss this crucial detail. The lessons began that very evening in Wade's small office, with Lily approaching the challenge of literacy with the same methodical determination she applied to everything else. Wade quickly discovered that her years of observing written language had given her advantages most beginning readers didn't possess. She already recognized many letter shapes and had developed theories about how words worked that were remarkably close to accurate. "I always wondered why some words look the same in different places," Lily said, as Wade showed her how letters combine to form simple words, like the appearing over and over in newspapers. "I thought it might be something important since it showed up so often." Her progress was remarkable. Within 2 weeks, she was reading simple sentences. Within a month, she was working through children's books with growing confidence. But more than her rapid learning, Wade was impressed by her hunger for knowledge and her thoughtful questions about everything she encountered. "Why do some letters sound different in different words?" she asked one evening as they worked through a primer. "The A in cat doesn't sound like the A in cake." Wade found himself explaining phonics, spelling rules, and the complexity of English pronunciation to someone who absorbed every lesson with the focused intensity of someone making up for years of lost time. Teaching Lily became the highlight of his days, a chance to share knowledge with someone who valued it the way he had when he was struggling to educate himself. But their evening lessons were about more than just literacy. As Lily's reading improved, Wade began bringing her books on ranch management, cattle breeding, and agricultural techniques. To his amazement, she grasped complex concepts with ease and began offering insights that improved ranch operations. "These breeding records," Lily said one evening, studying the ledger where Wade tracked cattle lineages. "You could cross-reference them with feed consumption and weather patterns to predict which bloodlines will thrive in different conditions." Wade stared at her, realizing she had just suggested an analytical approach that could revolutionize ranch management. "Where did that idea come from?" "I've been watching the cattle since I arrived," Lily replied matter-of-factly. "Patterns become obvious when you pay attention long enough. I may not have been able to read about animal husbandry, but I've been observing it firsthand for months." The conversation marked a turning point in their relationship. Wade began to see Lily not as a charity case he was helping, but as an intellectual partner whose unique perspective and analytical mind complemented his own practical experience. She started joining him on ranch inspections, offering observations that consistently proved valuable and insightful. More importantly, as Lily's confidence in her intellectual abilities grew, her entire demeanor transformed. The quiet, apologetic woman who had stepped off the train became someone who spoke with authority about subjects she understood, who asked probing questions about things she wanted to learn, and who carried herself with the dignity of someone who knew her own worth. What you're seeing now is nothing compared to what happens next. The crisis that would test both Lily's new knowledge and Wade's growing respect for her abilities came during Colonel Morrison's next visit to the ranch. The colonel arrived expecting to find his simple-minded niece quietly performing menial tasks under Wade's supervision. Instead, he found her in the ranch office, working with complex breeding records and discussing cattle genetics with a fluency that left him speechless. "What is the meaning of this?" Colonel Morrison demanded, his face flushing with anger and embarrassment. "Wade, I trusted you to keep Lily occupied with appropriate work, not to fill her head with ideas above her station." "Uncle, I've been learning," Lily began, but Morrison cut her off with a sharp gesture. "You've been making a fool of yourself and embarrassing our family," he snapped, "pretending to understand things that are beyond your capacity." "Wade, I'm disappointed in you for encouraging this charade." Wade's protective instincts flared, but before he could speak, Lily stepped forward with quiet dignity. "Uncle, I'm not pretending to understand anything," she said calmly. "I've spent the last 6 months learning to read and studying ranch management. I can now read any book you place in front of me, write detailed reports, and analyze complex data. Would you like me to demonstrate?" Morrison's face darkened. "I will not be made a laughingstock by a niece who thinks reading a few children's books makes her educated." "Pack your things, Lily. I'm sending you to live with your aunt in California, where you'll learn to behave appropriately for a woman of your limited abilities." That's when Wade made a choice that surprised everyone, including himself. "Colonel," he said quietly, his voice carrying the steady authority that had made him one of the territory's most respected ranch foremen. "With all due respect, Lily has proven herself to be one of the most capable people I've ever worked with. Her analytical skills and attention to detail have improved ranch operations in ways that have increased profits by 20% this season alone." He gestured toward the records spread across his desk. "These breeding projections, feed optimization charts, and weather pattern analyses, they're all her work. She's not pretending to understand ranch management, she's revolutionizing it." Morrison stared at the documents, clearly struggling to process evidence that contradicted everything he believed about his niece. "This is impossible. She can't even read." "I couldn't read 6 months ago," Lily said firmly. "But I learned. I studied. I applied myself with the same dedication I would give to any important task. The fact that I started later than most doesn't mean I'm incapable of mastering difficult subjects." The confrontation continued for another hour, with Morrison alternating between denial, anger, and grudging amazement as Lily demonstrated her abilities. Finally, faced with incontrovertible evidence of his niece's intelligence and competence, he made a grudging concession. "Very well," he said stiffly. "If Wade believes you're truly capable of this work, you may remain at the ranch. But I expect you to conduct yourself with appropriate dignity and remember your place as a woman." And that's when the most incredible transformation began. Over the following year, Lily's partnership with Wade evolved from teacher-student to equal collaboration, and finally to something deeper and more meaningful than either had expected when their lessons began. Her intelligence, once hidden behind shame and social expectations, flourished in an environment where it was valued and challenged. She developed new systems for tracking cattle health, created detailed weather prediction models based on historical data, and negotiated supply contracts that saved the ranch thousands of dollars. Her contributions became so valuable that other ranchers began consulting with the Double Eagle, specifically to benefit from her analytical expertise. More importantly, Lily's transformation inspired Wade to confront his own assumptions about education, worth, and the artificial barriers society created between people. Working with someone who had overcome such profound educational disadvantage reminded him that intelligence came in many forms and that everyone deserved the chance to develop their capabilities to the fullest extent possible. Their professional partnership gradually became personal as they discovered that their shared commitment to learning, mutual respect for each other's abilities, and complementary skills created a bond that went deeper than simple attraction or social convenience. "I never expected to find someone who understood what it meant to fight for knowledge the way you have," Wade said one evening as they worked late in the office, reviewing plans for expanding the ranch's operations. "I never expected to find someone who saw potential in me when everyone else saw only limitations," Lily replied, looking up from the financial projections she'd been calculating. "You gave me more than literacy, Wade. You gave me the chance to discover who I really am when I'm not defined by what I lack." Their wedding took place the following spring, with Lily wearing a dress she had sewn herself while planning a honeymoon that would combine business travel to cattle auctions with visits to libraries and universities in Denver and Kansas City. She had become a woman who approached everything, love, marriage, ranch management, and continued learning, with the same systematic determination that had transformed her from someone dismissed as simple-minded into one of the territory's most innovative agricultural thinkers. Years passed and the Mackenzie Ranch became known throughout the region not just for its successful operations, but for its progressive approach to education and employee development. Lily established a school for ranch workers and their families, teaching literacy to adults who had been denied early education, and creating opportunities for children who might otherwise remain trapped by circumstances beyond their control. The woman who had been dismissed as intellectually deficient became a respected authority on agricultural innovation and adult education, proving that intelligence, once unleashed, could transform not just individual lives, but entire communities. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that everyone deserves the chance to learn and grow regardless of their starting point, then you've found your home. Subscribe to Wild West Romance Stories for more tales of transformation, partnership, and love that grows from mutual respect and shared commitment to bringing out the best in each other. From ranch offices to schoolhouses, every story we tell proves that the strongest bonds are built not on what we know, but on our willingness to learn and teach together. This is where hidden potential finds its voice and where love grows from the courage to see beyond society's limitations.